Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here today, and thank you for coming to this very important announcement today. What I'd like to do today is bring to the public's attention and expose what can only be described as a conspiracy to defraud the electoral process in District 1, Northern Westchester, Peekskill, Cortland, and Yorktown. And what took place over the last month was appalling to me and many of my colleagues on the board. Number one, because fraudulent documents were submitted to the Board of Elections to create a false candidacy for a latecomer to the election, as well as a breach of ethics on the County Board of Legislators. Let me explain what I mean by that. In conjunction with the Peekskill Democratic Party, which you see their headquarters behind me, which is why we're standing here today, the officers of that party, along with my colleague on the County Board of Legislators, Catherine Borgia, who happens to also be my colleague in leadership, as she is the majority leader and I'm the minority leader. So you can understand the disappointment I have and most of my colleagues on the board have for her involvement in this, where she personally went out and got 70 signatures of supposed voters on petitions for my opponent within my district. She went out of her own district, went into my district, which is unheard of, not only to help an opponent of mine, a sitting legislator, a colleague, but to also obtain signatures to help that person get on the ballot. Now, in the Democratic Party, you need 500 valid Democratic signatures within the district, registrants within the district to sign petitions to get on the ballot. My opponent, Derek Hartley, or potential opponent Derek Hartley, submitted 563 signed petitions. Those 563 we challenged, and we determined that 140 were worth challenging because either they did not live in the district, they were not individuals who were Democratic voters at all, not even registered within the party, or not Democratic voters at the address that they submitted onto the petition. My opponent got 70 of those 563. So without her 70 alone, without even getting into the faulty additions that were put onto the other petitions, that person would not have gained enough signatures to get the nomination. He himself, Derek Hartley, got 57 signatures. About half of his were bad. So about half of Catherine Borgia's were fraudulent or unqualified signatures or entries, as well as Derek Hartley, about half of his. On top of that, and you will see in the press release that's being handed out, members, and mainly they are the officers of the Democratic Party here in Peekskill, Ruth Wells, Marina Ciotti, who's the chairperson, Darren Rigger, Linda Wildman, Terrence Rogers, candidate for mayor Kenneth Martin, Nina Levine, Vivian McKenzie, Kathy Talbot, and in town of Cortland, Karen Pecora, Thomas Carey, in the village of, also in the town of Cortland, Mary Brining, in Yorktown, Joseph Vittoria, who happens to be the treasurer of the Democratic Party, and Vishnu Patel, who submitted about a third of his submissions were unqualified submissions to the Board of Legislators, or to the Board of Elections for the Board of Legislators seat for District 1. Now let me explain to you what I'm talking about. Here is a sample of one of Catherine Borgia's submitted petitions. And you will see wherever there's a highlight, that submission was either a non-registered voter or someone not in the district. It's not the person's fault. I want to make it very clear. It's not the person's fault who signed this. They were probably asked, do you want to sign a petition? Are you a registered voter? So forth and so on. When they were standing in front of the supermarket, which is what I understand most of these were gathered, they signed it in good faith, thinking they were doing the right thing as a voter in District 1. At that point, before that person signs this witness statement at the bottom, and this witness statement is tantamount to standing in front of a judge and raising your right hand and say you swear that everything is true that is submitted on this piece of paper. They had the opportunity to check each and every one of these, and if they were not valid voters within District 1, all they needed to do was put a line through them, No harm, no foul. They hand it in, and whatever is not crossed out will be counted. The Board of Elections counts on challengers or opponents of each other to make these checks. The Board of Elections does not do these checks on their own. They count on the candidates to check. And then that's why they have what's known as general objections, which you put in right away after the petitions are handed in after July 9th. And then you have 6 days to put in the specifics. We put in the specifics of 140. Here's one of Catherine Borgia's, which shows the fraudulent signatures. There's one in particular I want to point out. This person right here, Michael Maury, the paid political operative of the Peekskill Democratic Party, who was a former chairperson of the party, who is now a political consultant, who signed this with an address that he no longer lived at. He moved out of this address a few weeks to a month before he signed this. Evidence of that was submitted to the Board of Elections as part of the objections. He moved to the town of Cortland, and he put his Peekskill address here. He knows better as a political person not to do that. That's why that's highlighted. To show an example of my opponent's petition, or I should say potential proponent's petition. Everything highlighted in green was an unqualified entry to this petition. And if you even look down here, someone else started to sign it. He crossed it out, initialed it, and then he signed it. So what was really going on here? What was really happening behind closed doors once all these were submitted? Look at this. Woodstock, New York, I think, I know he's new to the political process, but I think he knows that Woodstock, New York is not part of District 1. I think he knows that Putnam Valley is not part of District 1, or Yonkers, or Salem, New York. I think they know where District 1 boundaries are. So to hand these in was appalling, it's illegal, it's fraudulent, and that's why we were compelled to challenge, and that's why the Board of Elections agreed with us, and Mr. Hartley's petitions were disqualified, and he will not be a candidate for office this year. So we were successful in protecting the public's interest. The defrauding of the process was stopped. Every single election since I've been running for County Board of Legislators, the Peekskill Democratic Party has done something fraudulent, something underhanded, something illegal to try to stop me from winning or continuing in my position or having an opponent created against me. And I'm tired of it. I'm not going to stand for it anymore. The ends justifies the means mentality that the Democrats have here in Peekskill. I'm not tolerating. The people of Peekskill and the people of District 1 will not tolerate it. This is a joke. This is embarrassing for our community. This is embarrassing for the political process. Politicians get a bad enough name and have a hard enough time getting the public's trust. I worked 20 years to gain that trust, 33 years as a teacher on top of that. I have the trust of my constituents. I work hard for them. For someone to come in and try to thwart the process, enter fraudulent documents, have a County Board of Legislators majority leader, the ringleader behind this, is just appalling to me, and I'm not going to stand for it. I'm glad we did that. And I know the people behind me who have been my supporters, candidates for office, members of the government here in District 1. We also have GOP chair people from Peekskill and Yorktown here, Serafina Mastro and Vinny Vesey are here. And just before I have Chairman Vesey come up, I just want to point out, you're probably asking yourselves, how did I know to look at their petitions? Well, guess what? I have a lot of friends in the Democratic Party. I've been in government for 20 years. They called me. People from the Democratic Party of Cortland and Yorktown called me because they were concerned about what was going on. They told me to keep an eye on what was happening. They told me that they were not getting involved. If you notice, the people who are involved are only officers of the party. The rank and file of the party wanted nothing to do with this. They did not go out and try to thwart the process. So because of that, and I give them a lot of credit because the Democrat voter deserves to be voting for an honest person with integrity, and they don't want to see the process thwarted as well. The average Democratic voter in Peekskill just wants the best for Peekskill. In Cortland the same, and in Yorktown the same. They want to see the process be done properly, lawfully, And that's why they called me and told me to keep an eye out for what was going on, and they were appalled by it. They never met the candidate. They were never giving a chance for him to go in front of the committee and be interviewed and vetted, which is why they were very upset. They didn't even know who this person was, and they were expected to go out and get petition signed for this person who was not even nominated by the party. So they did not like the process that was put in place late in the game, by the way, and they were appalled. So they wanted to protect their party. They didn't want their party to be embarrassed. Unfortunately, that's going to happen today, but that's not because of them. They tried. Chairman Vest.
Thank you, John. I'm not going to reiterate the aspect of this particular event or series of events that the county legislator and mayor went into. That speaks to the integrity of the process. Those of us like Sarafina and myself and others that are here who are district leaders in the party recognize that the one thing that we have to do when we get involved with this process is to make sure that the integrity of the process is intact. Clearly, that was not the case on the Democrat side with respect to these petitions to try and get a candidate to run against John Testa. The other aspect of this, though, that I think is very important, and I don't want to let just slide by, is this. The one thing that each and every citizen, whether they're a Democrat, Republican, or unaligned with any particular party, the one thing that they want from their elected officials is that once they are elected into a position, they want them to work together. They want them to work for the betterment of the constituency that they represent. Clearly, the actions of Ms. Borgia absolutely was disgraceful with respect to how she has poisoned the well with regard to bipartisanship on the county legislative board. John Testa and Ms. Borgia are there to work together for the betterment of their constituencies. By her taking an active role to come into John Testa's district to generate petitions, signatures on the petition that end up being fraudulent at the end of the day anyhow, is an absolute disgrace. Now, I believe that she should be embarrassed about that. I am sure she is not embarrassed about that. That is the sad part of this whole story. With respect to us being here today, a lot of us have other things that we wanted to do and we could be doing. But this issue is so important because it goes to the heart of the democratic process. That's a small d, by the way, that we all felt that it was important for us to be here to support John and to, by the way, salute the Board of Elections for disqualifying this person as a candidate of the Democratic Party. So that's my statement for today. I congratulate John in his efforts to make sure that things are done properly, and I hope that everybody in this district, in fact everybody in Westchester County, feels good about the idea that they could go to the Board of Elections with challenges of this nature, and when there is blatant disregard for the law, that blatant disregard for the law is going to be thrown out the window. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes.
I think you and Legislator Borgia had a pretty good working relationship since you were named minority leader to majority leader. Did something happen between you two that she would?
You're correct. We've been working together very well since day one together. This came as a complete surprise to me. She feels that politics is a separate entity from the government, and that is something that she can do at her leisure, at her free will. I did confront her before I even knew they were fraudulent signatures on the petitions. When I found out that she not only went into my district to obtain signatures, that she got 70, the most of anybody, to help put my potential opponent over the line. All she could say to me was, "I appreciate your feelings. He's probably not going to win anyway. It's just something that the locals wanted me to help with, and that's what I'm doing." So that's why I knew something was going on between the groups. She did this as a pure political move. We've had no disagreements on the board. Obviously, we have our policy differences here and there, but we do that in a professional way. We had a very, very good personal relationship, working relationship. So this happening behind my back was a very, very disappointing thing to see happen. Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming.